That's a fragment from the second solo in Heaven by the Los Lonely Boys. That solo I'm using as a vehicle to teach major scale ideas and how to visualize your major scales when you're playing guitar and how to learn the cage system that everybody talks about. There's many ways to hash that out, and I've seen a billion approaches. I think all of it's relevant ideas, but let me kind of give you my opinion on it and what seemed to help my students over the last 2 decades of teaching, almost 2 decades and a half. So let me flip screens here for you. This is how I don't believe is a good idea to learn your scales. All you're learning is a digital pattern. It's a good exercise for your fingers, but teaches you really nothing about your fretboard other than a pattern that you can kind of aimlessly wander about. And frankly, I feel like it's just an exercise for your fingers. A little better is what you'll see in a lot of books, the cage system. I don't know if you're this advanced or not, but you can see a D shape or a C-shaped bar chord. This is called the C-shape cage position for the major scale. And I forgot a note. Bam, there's your other note I missed. So also easy to get lost in this pattern. It gives you a little reference because you know the red note. So the G note, that's the root note of the key, and the notes that surround the chord shape starts to give you a little better view of the fretboard. Moving a little deeper, if you learn the intervallic approach, you can actually see all the intervals surrounding the chord tones. The chord tones are in red and black, the root, the third, the fifth, the root, and the third. That's really where you need to start. And then you're going to wrap the other notes around that, which would be the addition of your twos, your sixes, and your fours. I missed another note there too. Gotta be careful. So there's all your notes for that major scale. That's the ultimate goal, is to see this surrounding your chord shape. I don't believe tackling this at one time is the best way to do that either. I think that's almost like shoving a whole pizza in your mouth. You want to eat it one slice at a time, and you want to learn it with the melody so that you're free not to just play up and down scalar, but to actually play nice melodic ideas. So I think that's why we learn solos. And then if you know this approach, you can also transpose your solos to other keys, and we'll demonstrate that in a moment. So jumping into the solo. The solo I have tabbed out for you there. This is also not a great way to learn your solos. It's fine to use tablature. I have nothing against tablature, but when you're learning this, you want to know what you're actually playing underneath your hands. So let's start with our chord shape. This is actually in the key of G. He tunes down a half step, so if you tune your guitar down, that's going to sound correct. He's in E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. I did it in standard tuning. You can type in Heaven by Los Lonely Boys to find a standard tuning version of it on the internet to play along with. So what I've got here is I've got my root, my third, and my fifth. That is a D-shaped chord, but in the current position of the root note on the 8th fret, that is a G note. Surrounding that chord, we have other notes, but we want to start with that. Why do we want to start with that shape? Well, first of all, if you know your notes on your second string, here's your D note. That's a D chord. Everybody knows that one. Move it up to E. I can move it up to F. And I can move it to G. And so forth and so on. So this is an easy device to move around. I can see it very easily. To move those chords around. So that is my G chord. So what I'm doing on the first lick, I have this. Zoom in on that. If you watch, you can actually see the D chord outlined. That to my ear sounds very Allman Brothers-ish too. It's got that happier kind of blues sound. So we're seeing that visual shape, and we need to attach names to all the notes around that chord shape. This is how you're going to visualize the fretboard. This intervallic approach works for everybody. I haven't had a student yet that hasn't learned the fretboard much better in theory and how to do chords and scales than doing this approach. I'm taking a small fragment. We're going to get the big scale eventually, but we're going to work up to it from this chord shape. So I need to take this solo and I need to transpose it to this on the fretboard so I can visualize it. So the 10th fret happens to be the 5th note of the scale. The 8th note happens to be the 4th note of the scale. These are the intervals as they relate to the root. So this is 5 notes away, 4 notes away, 3 notes away. So he walks down the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd to the root, and then down to the 5th. Da, 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 ba, bum. Now from there, 9, 10. So we've got the 9 and the 10. This is going to give us the third. And there's your root. And now you can see what's called a C-shaped scale. So we're actually adding the fourth. 3, 4, jump into the root, back to 3, 4, back to the 3, and then we're going to jump back down to the root, and then we're going to slide from the 5 to the 6th, jumping up to the 4th, back to the 3rd, and down to the root. If you think about it that way, that's going to help you organize that scale much better, and you can start to see the beginning of the C shape from the cage system. That's this shape you're seeing here, and of course you see the tones in here. And I've kind of eliminated all the clutter around the scale by just thinking of the notes that are in the solo, and that helps me memorize a few at a time. You'll start to see some commonalities. 3 next to 4. 5 is always a whole step up to 6, so yes, if we were here we could go up to 6 there. And that gives you starting to diagram what's going on around that triad shape and how to add that major scale in small bites until you memorize those tones. You'll get all these extra notes later on. You're going to learn the 2nd and the 7th, and this 2 down here, and you got your 6, 7, and root there. We'll fill in all the gaps later, but start small and think about what you've got. And that'll give you an effective way to learn your solos there. And I have the tablature, which is good. Sing everything you play. That's going to help you get the melody into your head and let you phrase it well, and then think about how it relates to the fretboard. So what's cool about this concept is if I have this melody, that'll work. We got one more. That's going to give you that melody around this D shape. So what if I'm playing in a different song, maybe the Allman Brothers or something in E? I can move it down to E, same scale. Right? Oops. There's that same scale, right? One more time. Move in any key you want, just by moving that D shape around, and being able to apply that lick to other keys lets you improvise freely and build your own melodic motifs around it, and you'll see those scales much better. In the long run too, those same chord shapes, knowing the scales around are going to give you a lot of rhythmic ideas that you can employ as well. You want to be able to know where all your tones are and how to build your chords from those smaller triads. I always reference a book by Robert Brown called Chord Connections. It's a great one in the chord study of smaller triads and building the fretboard up through triads on different string sets. It does not get into scales so much, but if you learn your scales around it with the cage system, it's going to give you a vehicle to practice not only horizontally or vertically, but also horizontally on the fretboard in a very logical and easy manner, so that you're not stuck in those cage systems. I hear a lot of people badmouth the cage system. I think learning it in those big blocky dot shapes that we talked about is not the best way to do it, but if you learn it this way, and I'll show you note lessons how we can connect those triads horizontally up and down the neck, so you're free to float around this fretboard on both axes, the horizontal and vertical axes. Anyway, that's a little bit from heaven. That's a great solo to learn. I encourage you to learn the whole song. It's got a lot of great ideas in it, in major, as well as incorporating around the major pentatonic, the fourth, which gives you a nice melodic sound. That was that note that we hit in that song. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that helps you, give you a little better way to start learning your scales and understanding what's underneath your fingers, much better than just telling you here's the dots on the fretboard and aimlessly wandering through those notes. But that's how I would encourage you to learn your scales and learn melody, by learning your solos. So don't rely on the tab, don't rely on just blank dots. Dig in deeper. What's under my fingers? What am I hitting at any given moment? And how is it reacting to the key center of the chord I'm playing on? So hope that helped. And as well as if you have any questions, you can reach out to me at thefretfeed.com or Eric at thefretfeed.com. I'm available for private lessons if it's something you want to dig deeper into. Hope this helped you make more sense of the fretboard. Thanks.